What's going on, guys? Thanks everyone for being here again. Ton of people in the chat already. 28 to just talk some week 9, put this thing to bed with you guys. This is like one of my favorite shows to do every week. So if you're new here, welcome back. Well, I guess if you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back. Thanks to everyone that joined the Discord last week after that Sunday stream. That was just crazy. Had about 400 people on the stream, which was just nuts. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate all the support so far. Going to keep trying to build this thing up. Yeah, so I think I'm just more excited to kind of grow the community than anything. And it's just been a lot of fun kind of hanging out with subs in the Discord. So if you haven't checked out the Discord, definitely do that. So we're going to talk about last week. My team in the 1500 on DraftKings per usual. We'll go through a bunch of other guys' teams, look at the ownership dashboard over at Labs, check out some stacks. Kind of business as usual. Week 9, I can't believe it's week 10 already, which is just absolutely insane. Yeah, just some housekeeping stuff. I will have the new computer by the next stream. Fingers crossed. Hodge sent it off, so you guys can stop tweeting at him. Hashtag blame Hodge, even though I think that's awesome. Because I definitely blame Hodge for how bad the audio quality has been with guests. But yeah, just solo today. Definitely check out the YouTube channel as well. New video went up there. I'm actually doing a 10K to 100K challenge, but only niche sports and a little bit of sports betting. So doing some pick'em on DraftKings, some of the tiers, showdown, just for NBA and NHL. So I think it's going to be really cool to see if I can build that thing up as those seasons go. Who knows? I don't know if I'll be able to do it or not, but it'll be a fun thing to try. Some prop bets as well. So you guys will be following along there. If you want more information about the challenge itself, check out the YouTube. Just made a video for that. So yeah, thanks to everyone in the chat. As we kind of go through here, per usual, just throw any questions you may have, any lineups you see that you want me to go over. So you see Al's lineup, you want me to go over Al's lineup, throw it in the chat. It'll be the next one up. So yeah, before we get into this, had a couple people on Twitter, people that probably haven't been following along throughout the year. I primarily play these small field, higher stakes tournaments. So the mid to high stakes, right? So 1500. But the main thing is I really like to attack these small field sizes. So only 72 people in this, still 25K up top. It's just a really nice flat tournament structure, but had a couple people asking about results. Guys, I have no problem showing you results. Like, if I was just getting crushed this year, I'd show you the same thing. So one of the cool things about Roto Tracker, they're actually sponsoring the Bankroll Challenge, is you can actually filter out whatever you want in these results. And I actually think that it's something that a lot of people don't do, is go through and look at what games they're profitable in. So if you want to check out Roto Tracker, check out your results. I do have an affiliate link below. Check out that. If not, totally cool. But I just wanted to kind of show you guys this chart, just to kind of give you an idea of how my season's gone. Week 1 was great. Was out in Hoboken for the DraftKings Week 1 party. Was really nice. And then had about 3-4 weeks in a row where we lost money in this tournament. And then the spike came. And that's what NFL's about, guys. It's about surviving through some of those tough weeks, because it's a tough sport. Like, I've talked about this a decent amount of times. In this downswing, had a bubble where I missed the cash line by 0.30 or 0.03 points, something absurd, like way less than a point. That kind of stuff happens in NFL. But yeah, if you can survive, keep your process the way it should be. I do truly believe in playing mostly what you think is optimal in these tournaments. We'll talk a little bit about some of the decisions I made. I think the main thing is doing at least a correlation tweak or something unique in roster construction, which we'll talk about. So yeah, 9 weeks in, obviously it's been a great start, but it could easily go bad. Look, we've had a ton of weeks in a row here where we weren't profitable in this tournament, had a spike, and then now we're on another downswing after quite the run. So we'll try and turn things around this week, but just wanted to kind of show you that chart because I think this graph is just cool in general. You can basically sort out anything you want, which is pretty cool. Anyways, Manny, what's up, man? Yeah, you're glad Manny's in the chat. Just to remind you guys, if you haven't already, I'm sure most of you guys are already subscribers of Manny and Hodge. But we got a kind of a good thing going on Sunday mornings right now. Kind of go through the week, but actually get starting with me at 9 a.m. Just kind of get our feet set, waiting for news, and then Manny goes on directly after me around 10:15 or so Eastern time, and then Hodge after him. I'm sure all of you guys have checked out Smiz as well. So it's kind of awesome that we have this kind of Twitch community. People could sit here all morning and have access to us, the chat, the community in general. So yeah, happy you guys are here. All right, so let's kind of jump into it. Definitely throw any questions along in chat, like I said before. But let's look at this first tournament. So yeah, let's just go through my team first. Didn't cash this week, as you guys saw on the Rotor Tracker chart. So about halfway down here in 31st place or 31st place, 31st place. So yeah, again, my thought process with this tournament is to start with what I think is optimal and either do something kind of unique in roster construction or kind of correlate a little bit more than I normally would, right? So that's what I try to do with this team. I think that I had enough room to make some swaps, but honestly, I thought that my team was unique enough in the afternoon that even though I was behind after the morning, a lot of people were behind after the morning, at least those that rostered Cam. So yeah, H3 Buddha, thanks for the tier 1 sub, man. Appreciate it. Primetime 186 with the follow. Manny finally subscribes to my channel. What's up, Manny? All right. So my lineup went with Cam, DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey to start the day. Honestly, like if you guys were around for the Sunday morning stream, wasn't really super high on DJ Moore as far as the cheap wide receivers go. And looking back, that was probably a little bit of a mistake. I thought that Cortland Sutton was fine. Honestly, I think that was just kind of a play that didn't really work out. Just freed up so much after that Demaryius Thomas trade. I mean, this is a player he's flashed difference-making ability in the preseason. I thought that he had a little bit more upside than DJ Moore, than Traquan Smith. We'll talk about him as well. But I do think that Sutton had a decent amount of red zone opportunity as well. We've seen that even before this role change. It was at least reasonable to think that he would have taken over a decent amount of Demaryius Thomas's role. So I was fine with that, but originally starting with this Carolina stack. But I mean, we kind of ran bad with Cam, honestly. Like there was a point in the morning where I think there was 4 touchdowns. Cam wasn't involved in any of them. So that's tough. Samuel rushing touchdown, not a passing touchdown. Like that's just brutal. Brutal start, especially for a guy that's 40% in such a good spot. Like we talked about it on Sunday morning about how this is going to be a high scoring game. It's set up really well at the line of scrimmage for both. A lot of high pace to expect, and we got the points. We just didn't. We kind of ran bad with Cam Newton. Definitely the kind of lower end of what his expectation could have been if Carolina was going to score 42 points. So honestly, I'm still pretty okay with the Cam play. Considered Goff, but as we'll talk about, kind of that game I was on a little bit different game script. Yeah, so as far as the rest of my lineup went, I really wanted to get up to Travis Kelce. That was a play that I felt like I really was trying to prioritize on Sunday morning, even after the Diggs news came out with Rudolph. So like the thing with Rudolph is I thought he was a really good play if you wanted to pay down, of course. But Cousins hasn't really shown the willingness to target him in the way some of these other Minnesota quarterbacks have recently. So I mean, he's a guy that if he doesn't get in the end zone, he can pretty much bury you. So really wanted to get up to Kelce in this spot against Cleveland. I definitely considered Mahomes as well. I talked about that on the stream on Sunday morning, how trying to get up to Mahomes at 7,100, whatever he was going to be somewhat unique. So I'm sure we'll see a team with Mahomes as we go through. But yeah, I wanted to get access to that game somehow, and the way I did it was with Kelce. The other side of that game that I was considering was paying down for Chubb at running back, and kind of I was pretty much locked into McCaffrey most of the morning and Kamara. Those were kind of the first two guys in for me, just massive roles in the passing game. we'll talk about the Saints in a second. But outside of Kelsey, definitely considered Chubb in one of those running back slots, and really liked the KC defense as well, but ended up going with the Broncos, which I still think was okay. Home favorite against Deshaun Watson. Guy takes a lot of sacks. Pace was decent in this game too. Normally I wouldn't really like to play a wide receiver with my defense, but I thought there was enough upside to where you didn't really need to fade the Broncos at 2,300, because if they have a good game, they completely bury you in a field size this small. So that's kind of my thought process on at least that side of things. And all right, so let's talk about the swaps, or what was going to happen going into the afternoon games. And my biggest thing here was I wanted to be unique. I talked about it Sunday morning, how I really liked the run game for New Orleans. I mean, we all love this game for points, right? But I was trying to figure out where those points were going to come from. In hindsight, probably should have prioritized Michael Thomas a little bit more. I was a little bit nervous just because, I mean, his volume's been significantly down lately, given his price. Just roster construction in general, it's normally harder for me and my style to get up to some of those more expensive wide receivers, especially with all the value we had on the board at wide receiver this week, that it didn't really feel like the optimal roster construction to me, especially since I wanted to get Kamara, wanted to get McCaffrey. So in order to play McCaffrey, Kamara, Gurley was basically out for me on DraftKings for this main team with the roster construction I was going with Kelsey. If I would have played Rudolph, the other rosters I was messing around with in the morning were with Gurley and Chubb and Kamara, but I didn't really feel good about fading McCaffrey, so I ended up going this direction. I thought that the game flow was going to lean more towards the run for New Orleans. You can definitely run on the Rams. That's something that they had been doing a lot more the past few games, and so unique lineup construction. For me, that was playing Ingram and Kamara both. This is something that I don't know if I've done this in 2 years. Even last year when Ingram and Kamara were just smashing together, and people were talking about doing this last year when Ingram was like 7K and Kamara was like 7,500. Like, the price with Ingram at 5K, I mean, this guy still got, like, what did he have? So he had 9 attempts in the last game, but he also had 2 targets. So, I mean, for a guy that had the expectation of maybe getting 12 touches at 5K in the highest total game on the week, like, I didn't love the Ingram play by any means, but it did make some things fit. I definitely considered Lindsey at 5,500, but just the idea of capturing Ingram, Kamara together, 7,300 plus 5K, just those touches together and that kind of touchdown equity together made a lot of sense to me in this game when I thought that New Orleans was going to be able to run. And, I mean, Mark Ingram gets stopped at like the 2-yard line. Maybe we think a lot differently about this. Maybe he doesn't fumble. Didn't get a ton of touches after that. Michael Thomas just going nuts. Yeah, maybe I should have found a way to get there instead of having Cooper Kupp. Definitely could have made it work if I moved off of Kelsey, or if I ended up playing Chubb instead of one of these other running backs. Certainly could have made it work, but I still feel okay about at least the thought process of trying to be unique with my roster. So getting Kelsey at 11%, I was pumped when I opened this and saw that. Definitely think that Cam ran pretty bad. I was really narrow at quarterback, guys. I basically was in between Cam, Mahomes, and Fitz. I really didn't want to play Goff, really didn't want to play Breeze. I thought that there was a chance that New Orleans tried to slow the game down a little bit, which was probably a mistake. I mean, the Superdome, it's a little bit different game environment than usual, but it is kind of a situation where if some of the touches end up being on the ground, it kind of limits the upside, but I guess when you score that many points, it really doesn't matter. So probably was a mistake not at least considering Goff a little bit more. But yeah, that was pretty much the thought process. I was behind enough, but not too far behind. So I think before the afternoon game started, I was in the 20 range somewhere with some of these guys to go, and I already thought that I would be unique with Kamara and Ingram. surprisingly wasn't the only person to do that in this small tournament, which was interesting. But Kelsey 11% was a cornerstone for me. I mean, 1 point away from the bonus. That really would have been nice, especially since just the bonus alone would have had me in within striking distance. I mean, 17 positions paid in this tournament. If I get anything from the Broncos or anything more from Ingram, this still could have been a team that did relatively well with some busts at wide receiver. So that was kind of my thought process. Trudon FM says that he thinks Kamara and Ingram combining for 40 was a solid bet. Just that Kamara got all of it. Yeah, I mean, so what happened? Like I said, what happens if Ingram does get one of those touchdowns? Kamara ends up in the 24 range. Then maybe combining them looks a little sharper than it does here. But yeah, like I said, it's not something I do all the time, but I did think that it shaped up as a really good week to do that when I had a lot of kind of conviction towards what the running game was going to be able to do against this Rams team. So, all right, so that was pretty much my thought process on my lineup. Let's kind of move through some of the other teams. Let's start at the team at the top that won it. So EB I'm a 4 did go with the Goff stack. So he had Goff to Cooks, Kamara, Kupp, and Traquan just totally stacked up this game, which is great. He brought it back with Traquan. I mean, I didn't love the Traquan play. I mean, if he doesn't get that touchdown, obviously he's busting with the other cheap wide receivers. But OJ Howard was a guy that you kind of needed at the cheap end, especially if you didn't get it on Rudolph. 21.3 points at 4,300 definitely opened up a ton. It allowed him to get to Kareem Hunt. It allowed him to get to Kamara and then pay up from kind of the Chubb Ingram range to Philip Lindsay. I thought Lindsay was a really good play just because of his talent, but also because of how he's being used in the passing game. So there's a chance that if Sutton underperforms, I think Lindsay was actually a decent leverage play, to be completely honest, because there's a chance he was going to see some of those targets. Obviously, it ended up going to the tight end, who I was not really on, but yeah, it easily could have gone to Lindsay, so I thought that was fine. But going with the passing game certainly made a lot of sense with Goff, Cooks, and Kupp, bringing it back with Traquan and Kamara, just kind of a little game stack there. Still went chalky at defense, survived that. It's crazy to actually see the team that won this did it without Michael Thomas. Interesting. Like I said, guys, this tournament is so much different than some of the other GPPs on DraftKings, right? Like you can have kind of a below, like a 90th, 95th percentile team some weeks and still perform really well in a field size of only 72 people. So, all right, so throw some names in the chat, guys. I'm just going to kind of start picking people if you guys don't throw some names in there. I had the same thought process with that game, was heavy on that game and faded Thomas. Yeah, I actually thought that Thomas was a decent tournament fade, which I absolutely blew up in my face. But, I mean, I believe it was the most receiving yards ever by a New Orleans Saint wide receiver. So, yeah, not necessarily kicking myself for that one. But, I mean, at the same time, like, the number one wide receiver against Marcus Peters, I mean, he's one of the worst corners in the league, arguably. So, I don't know. Maybe that was bad. The Thomas thing is the one that's like really bothering me still, even though I was so heavy on the running game. But yeah, can we talk about how dominant that Saints D line was? They're good, man. I think even like people underestimate how good they are in the run game and at defending the run. So like Gurley was mostly neutralized. So like I felt actually pretty decent about that part of my process this week. This is like I think one of the only weeks the entire year I haven't played Gurley, and I was feeling so strong about the Kareem Hunt, the Kamara, the McCaffrey range. It just didn't feel necessary to me to pay down to Rudolph, to pay down to Chubb, which is what you needed to do. Like I was gonna play at least one of those wide receivers, those cheap wide receivers anyway, probably two. So getting Gurley in there is totally fine. I just thought if there was a week to fade him, it was probably this week for me. So that's kind of where I landed on the Gurley side of things. And then it ended up coming to fruition. Like they aren't as great at defending running backs in the passing game, which we did talk about on Sunday morning, but that D line is pretty elite. So yeah, good point there, Jordan. Puke I would have shipped. Not that I was debating entering. What was Sutton's owned again? Yeah. it's crazy, man. Like how sometimes like so this is a week where a lot of the high stakes tournaments were much lower scores than even some of the larger field stuff that was at the lower stakes, which we'll talk about. It sometimes it's the opposite, honestly. So it's just kind of a week to week thing. Sutton's ownership was 41%. Um, Chipotle Brothers, A Raven, Brandon Adams. All right, let's look at A Raven first. I can almost tell you exactly what his lineup construction is because he has a pretty similar approach almost every week. Yeah, so I'm not shocked at all that he had Jeff Heuerman. He does this every single week. He plays a tight end that's pretty much min price or close to min price. So, yeah, I honestly haven't looked at any of these teams yet, and I would put a lot of money on the fact that A Raven would have had Heuerman. So, he did go with Cam as well. Cam, McCaffrey, DJ Moore. Looks like he didn't bring it back with anyone, but he did have the salary to just jam in all of the running backs that you wanted, right? So he went with Kareem Hunt, Christian McCaffrey, Todd Gurley, and then cheaper running backs, Marvin Jones. Okay, so yeah, Marvin Jones versus Galladay was something that I was wrestling with in the morning too, and I was kind of looking at that cup range for my wide receiver play, but I was kind of nervous about Detroit in this game. I thought that there was a chance that this Minnesota defense is on the rise ever since they got Everson Griffin back. They've been a totally different defense, and kind of getting your playmaker, or at least your guy that kind of runs how the offense goes. Like he's the one that is basically captaining that defense. Like just having him back, it's kind of can't go understated how important that is for defense. So a division game that Minnesota doesn't have a ton of room for error in this division. So they kind of had to take care of business. Detroit looked awful in this game. I still think that Galladay is probably the one I would have landed on over Marvin Jones, but 16%. So his price, yeah, 5,300. So he was kind of in a no man's land for me, just based on what my roster construction was. But after he decided to play Gurley over Kamara, he definitely didn't have a ton of salary to get any higher. So yeah, some of these cheaper wide receivers, kind of a common theme. Buried A Raven a bit. He did go with Broncos D as well. So pretty chalky team from A Raven actually in comparison to normal. He's normally got a couple off the wall plays. Let's see. Chipotle Brothers. All right. Chipotle Addict, 59th this week. So he went with Cousins, Thielen, Treadwell, and Rudolph. Brought it back with Marvin Jones. So Chipotle, one of those guys, similarly to Pete, which we talked about when Pete was on the stream a couple weeks ago. A lot of these high stakes guys are game stacking this tournament, and I don't necessarily think that it's completely necessary, to be honest. You don't need these super low owned plays to take this thing down. But from that perspective, I still think that this roster was actually really sharp. So paid down at running back, got Chubb in there, allowed him to get Connor McCaffrey. I actually wish I would have talked about Connor a little more on the stream, just because he was a guy that I started to consider in the morning. Like I loved all that whole range. Like we're talking about wide receivers. Like look at just what some of these running backs that have an ability to be play in the pass game very well, that have crazy touch floors, like red zone involvement. Like just look at some of the running backs these past couple of weeks. Like they've all been kind of going nuts. So like anytime that I can just jam as many of those guys in as possible in a field size of 72 people, I think it's something that you really have to consider from a lineup construction standpoint. So Connor McCaffrey faded Kamara, faded Gurley, but did have kind of a low owned game stack. Cousins only 5.6%. Laquan Treadwell, again, I just didn't feel confident that Treadwell versus Aldrich. Like Aldrich had a pretty deep target in this game too. I'm not sure what he ended up with. Treadwell versus Aldrich felt very thin to me. Obviously, the other cheap wide receiver plays didn't really work out, but yeah, I thought Thielen was fine. It's the first game all year where he hasn't been over 100 yards, so tough to get that at 20%. I didn't realize that he was so highly owned. Panthers at 1.4%. I actually don't mind that, just because trying to attack these games where we think there's going to be high pace, a lot of plays. Definitely think the defense is always in play in those situations where there's going to be a lot of passing. I mean, there's definitely an argument that could have led towards Fitzpatrick having a really rough day as well. He's always kind of prone to turning the ball over. So I actually thought this was a pretty sharp lineup from Chipotle, even though it didn't quite work out for him. Let's go to Brandon Adams quick, and then I'll get to some of his other questions. Is Brandon Adams not even in here? Interesting. Yeah, it looks like Brandon Adams isn't in this one. Are people playing their cash lineups in this? I think some people are. I don't play a ton of cash. I basically just play this tournament, and then I'll hedge with some double ups if it's a week where I feel like I need to. And I play basically this and then a lot of the tournaments below it. So kind of still capture the upside below it, but mostly single entry stuff for me. So on my main team, I've said it before, but it's mostly an optimal team and then a slight tweak of correlation, or like this week, a different roster construction trying to get to Kelsey, and then obviously the New Orleans running backs. His lineup super. Yeah, Panthers defading that game is a good way to put that too, Maisie. Yeah, so anytime you're like really fading a chalky game like that and you play the defense, if you end up getting a touchdown or two from them and it takes any of the equity away from one of those really popular games, I think that was something I probably should have mentioned. So yeah, Mays or Bowie, really good call there. Connor at 5.6% ownership. Yeah, like a guy that's got massive target share, massive like volume on the ground as well. I get it. It's Baltimore's defense. They are pretty good at defending running backs in the passing game. It didn't really matter. 9 receptions for him. Another touchdown. Just Connor has been, for some reason, like there's just certain weeks where people just don't want to play this guy. So yeah, 5.6% makes a lot of sense. Connor and Duke saved my Sunday. Yeah, Duke. I remember you were going nuts in the Discord about Duke. That was sharp, man. How did you get on Duke? So he wasn't someone that I really considered just because of what we've seen so far. But I mean, as far as like the offense changing with this new regime, like it made sense that maybe he would have had a different role at least. So like taking a chance on a guy that is used in the passing game. If Chubb was going to fail, you were basically going to have a good chance at passing all those teams with Duke. So yeah, I'm curious how you got on him. I think I read that Detroit was shadowing Aldrich with Slay. Interesting. Yeah, Slay is, I mean, I'm not someone that really puts a lot of stock into the wide receiver cornerback thing. You're not going to hear me talk about that kind of thing a lot, because even if someone's shadowing, right, the way offenses are, there's especially some of the best wide receivers in the game. They're scheming to get them in different positions. They're moving them all over the field. There's still a decent chance that they don't run every single route against them, right? So I would rather focus on things like pressure, like pace. Like those are the things we can actually control to try and target good game environments. Like I definitely think that defense does matter, but more or less concerned with the tails of things, right? So if I'm playing against this run defense that I think is truly elite, that's something that I'll definitely pay attention to. But yeah, more or less, that's the things I'm looking at. For some reason, my Streamlabs is not showing my updates. Anyways, I'll try and get that going. But yeah, so he's too busy shipping everything. Yeah, I do the same thing. Round 1, I believe, is optimal as a main. Yeah, so H. Buddha, what kind of tournaments do you play with what you think is optimal then? I honestly don't think just playing a straight cash lineup in a single entry tournament of anything over 100 people is good, to be honest. I think that this is a unique tournament. I think that anything that's this small, it is fine, but anything over, honestly, like I'm not going anywhere near a tournament with 1,000 people with a cash game lineup. I think it's negative EV over the entire season. Just game flow and roster construction. I really wanted Kelsey and didn't want to just jam in 3 wide receivers. Yeah, I mean, if that's what led you to Duke, I think that was a really good decision that you made, just because not only were you getting leverage with Chubb, you were getting to a different lineup than a lot of people paying down for Rudolph getting to Kelsey. And when everyone like starts getting cocky about these wide receivers, it happens every year. Like we have a couple weeks in a row where some of the chalk wide receivers that are cheap really hit. People get a little bit cocky and don't realize how thin some of these plays are, myself included. I mean, I played 2 of these guys, so I felt good about fading Traquan, felt good about fading the Minnesota wide receivers. Ended up on DJ Moore when a good majority of the morning when I wasn't trying to fit in Kelsey. I honestly didn't really have Rudolph for much of the morning. I I was on Olsen, so I had Olsen, McCaffrey, Cam for a good majority of my morning. Obviously, wish I would have stuck with that, but yeah, these cheap wide receivers just burned a lot of people this week. That's for sure. Chubb's so bad in the passing game that figured he would get game scripted out of the game early. Yeah, I mean that's always the concern with these guys on DraftKings that just don't set up very well to be used that way. So like if game script goes completely wrong, you're pretty much buried. I mean I get that the price with Chubb, right? So he's 4,500, still considerably cheaper than even the Ingram range or the Lindsey range. So he allowed you to get to a lot of these plays. And if you played Chubb, if you played Rudolph, and even one of these wide receivers, look what you're able to do with your other wide receivers. Get Thielen, Jones, and still get a lot of equity at your other running back spots. So, Hodge, thanks for the bits. I don't know why my dashboard thing isn't working. I need that package you sent me to come in the worst way. Anyways, appreciate it, bro. Seriously. A single 250 double up. Oh, 250 and up. Yeah, I mean, I think that depending on the field size, that would be fine. But I would definitely try and steer clear of just playing a straight cash lineup in anything, honestly, over like 200-300 people. I'm not sure if that's optimal. All right, let's check out another lineup here. Not a ton of names I honestly recognize at the top this week, which is interesting. Let's look at McLovin's team at number 2. Also, Goff went Gurley, Goff, Michael Thomas, and then Cooper Kupp in that same game as well with Kamara. So pretty much a full game stack. His big differentiator was Ben Watson at tight end in that same game at 4.2%. And his price was interesting. I mean, talking about guys, so 3,200, talk about guys in a high total game at home, which definitely matters at tight end, high total, which definitely matters at tight end. Like, who was going to ruin your day if you kind of went heavy on these New Orleans guys, or who was going to ruin your day if you went really heavy on Traquan Smith? Like, Ben Watson was definitely one of those guys. So, I mean, getting access to this game at super low ownership, I think that he was probably the lowest owned viable play that people were considering, and paying down at tight end allowed him to get to Gurley and Kamara. The interesting thing for me is that he played a wide receiver in the flex. It's not something that we really see a ton. Hodge, did you get that week 10 sheet yet? If not, what's the holdup? What do you guys want to do? You guys are trying to do research for next week on Tuesday? What is wrong with you? If I started research on a Tuesday for an NFL slate, I would be so just mind fucked basically by the end of the week that it would not work out so well. But yeah, Jordan, just thanks for reminding me. So as far as the subs, Twitch subs, you do get access to a bunch of the data that I use. I basically put everything together that I think matters at each position and put it in a spreadsheet, and then I'm going to pin it in the subscriber chat in Discord for you guys to use. I think it's a really nice resource just because it takes me quite a while to put it together every week, and we will talk about it on the live stream, but just having that as you're building lineups is something that the subscribers will have access to. So yeah, I'm still trying to work out some other things that subscribers will have access to. Probably going to do some tournaments for subscribers only. Probably going to do some other kind of incentive-based stuff too. So just kind of getting my feet set on all this, guys. So anyways, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Jordan. All right, so outside of that on this team, just getting to Michael Thomas was obviously huge for him. Tyrell Williams, not someone that I really considered. So 2 reception touchdown. I mean, he's not really a high volume guy, but always kind of a threat to get a touchdown. So I thought that was fine. I mean, Broncos at 45%. It's still, I mean, all these teams at the top pretty much still have them. All right, so if we keep moving down here, let's see if we can find another. So let's look at Peter Gibbons' team. Peter Gibbons just still crushing the NHL streets as well. So he went with Jared Goff, like a lot of Jared Goff teams at the top, unsurprisingly. He did go with Cooks Cup, brought it back with Michael Thomas and Mark Ingram. That's pretty interesting. So, I mean, I get that. So playing Mark Ingram, hopefully the game script would have gone New Orleans' way, and you would have a lot of passing attempts from Goff with Cooks and Cup. So definitely think that part of it is strong. Having Michael Thomas in that, it's not something I probably would have done, but obviously, so if New Orleans was going to get ahead, it made sense that Michael Thomas would have been a big part of that. Interesting. So yeah, Kyle Rudolph, Chiefs D. Wow, if I would have known Chiefs D was at 6.9%, like I get it, they only scored one more point than Denver, but I thought they were actually super sharp. I mean, how many sacks was Mayfield taking? Like high pace game. KC's actually been pressuring a little bit better lately. So Chiefs D with Kareem Hunt, a little bit of correlation there, and Chris Carson. So Chris Carson was on my radar for swaps basically. I just can't pull the trigger on these guys. But yeah, he did get him at lower ownership. So if you're really trying to leverage the field, again, didn't really work out. But 2.8%, if this was a swap, I think that was a play that made a lot of sense if he was behind. Looks like he still cashed this, which is nice. Pretty solid team overall. I mean, Goff, Cooks, Cup. I would guess that this team was different before the afternoon game started. So basically only would have had Rudolph and then Kareem Hunt, Chiefs D. So yeah, he probably thought he was behind, to be completely honest. So probably went with something. This is probably a swap. I would put a lot of money on the fact that this is a swap. Just can't bring myself to play the yardage / TD guys on DK. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same way. I think it might be a hole in my game, honestly. Like the Chubb play just never feels right to me, and I think I kind of need to look into it a little bit more about what it lets me get to in my roster. Um, yeah, going down to Chubb off of Ingram would have given me a ton of savings, and might have been able to make a lineup work to maybe I get up to Mahomes and pair Mahomes with Kelsey. I think that was something that I really wanted to do at one point in the morning, just because we haven't seen a Mahomes team yet, but I would assume he was around 10% in this, and that's quarterback's kind of a nice place, or just a correlation play like I've talked about is a nice place to differentiate in this tournament, just because quarterback scoring is so flat anyway that if you truly catch that ceiling game, it can help you a lot. That's a dead team. No way he started like that. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Hodge. Like the more I looked at this team from Peter Gibbons, there's no way this was his start. Hodge sent you the package. Yep. Hodge sent me the package. Hodge is a goat. Don't no one's allowed to make fun of Hodge anymore for the computer not being here. He picked the wrong one. Davis got 17. There you go. Yeah. So that's the problem with kind of attacking these uh, kind of Seahawks running backs. It just wasn't something that was a very high equity play in my opinion, unless you're really just trying to swap, which is probably what he did. All right. Let's look at some other teams here. Let's look at Pete's team. So Pete was definitely, I thought he was going to make the cash line as I was kind of watching this unfold. So Pete, Cam, McCaffrey, DJ Moore brought it back with OJ Howard, which I thought was really sharp. Wish I would have been on OJ Howard a little bit more in this high total game. I was a little bit nervous that I guess get nervous with these Tampa Bay tight ends, which is probably a bias that I shouldn't have. Howard's been smashing. Peyton Barber in that stack as well was kind of a head scratcher for me. He wasn't someone that I was really considering. I don't really play these guys that don't get a ton of volume, but at 3,600 certainly opened up a ton. So that 3,600 allowed him to get to Michael Thomas, to get to Todd Gurley. So from a roster construction standpoint, if you're really going stars and scrub like Pete did here, Gurley, Michael Thomas, McCaffrey, and Cam, obviously two of the cheap wide receivers at high ownership as well. I think that this is a viable roster construction, and it's a full game stack like that I talked about. Like Pete, all these guys, Chipotle Addict, they're running game stacks in this. So yeah, this one just didn't quite work out. Carson got injured in quarter 1. There you go. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even watch that game, to be honest. I try my hardest not to watch these Seattle games. Peyton Barber, yikes. Yeah, I don't know. I still think that if you were going with a full game stack and you're trying to get like the cheapest play, honestly, in this game, it's not a play I probably would have made. But I mean, he got 11 rush attempts, 3 targets. I mean, I can't really trash Pete for Peyton Barber when I played Mark Ingram. So for 1,500 more. So all right, let's look at Proctor's team. So Proctor the whole morning was on Marvin Jones, I believe. He really liked kind of the Detroit passing game. This is like Hodge, Proctor, and I talk a lot on Sunday mornings a good amount, and a lot of times we're still kind of throwing around ideas and swapping things, but Proctor was like set so early this week. So I thought that was interesting that he landed on Marvin Jones 16.7% in this tournament. He locked in Gurley, Hunt, and Kamara, paid down pretty much everywhere. So his tight end play Ryan Griffin, 2.8%. I actually kind of like this strategy in a way, just like paying all the way, like, and not just like somewhat paying down at tight end, like paying down to 3,500 or so, or 3,700 like Rudolph, but like getting all the way down to one of these guys that probably doesn't have that much different expectation as far as touchdowns. Um, it's something I do want. I mean, 2.3 points, maybe in a tournament like this size, though. Look what it allowed him to get to. It got him to Gurley, it got him to Hunt, it got him to Kamara. He still was able to play two of these mid-range wide receivers that we really liked, and then he went with Fitz. So as far as his correlation, yes, I mean, just playing Fitz and not a ton of the rest of that game was kind of an interesting decision, but he did capture a ton of volume at the running back position that nearly worked out for him. If he just would have got a little bit more from Sutton, if this Detroit team wouldn't have just imploded last week, it might have ended up looking pretty good for him. So interesting. Let's see here. Naked Fits, yeah. So naked quarterback and something like this is something I try not to do. I think it does limit your upside a little bit, but Tampa Bay is a situation where it does make a lot of sense to me. Like that was my biggest problem with Tampa Bay is I just never really know who to pair with the Tampa Bay quarterback. So I think I've missed out on the Tampa Bay quarterback more than most people just because I never really feel completely confident in who to stack them with. Like I always feel like Mike Evans is a little bit overpriced for me, and trying to throw a dart with OJ Howard, or I played Godwin a bit just because his role is pretty safe, but it's really tough. This Tampa Bay team, like so many good weapons, it's you really have to land on the right one. But so I mean, I don't mind what Proctor did here. I mean, he captured 4 touchdowns that probably went to a bunch of different guys outside of Howard. Easily could have gone to 4 different guys. So interesting. All right, let's keep going down here. Yeah, if you guys see any names you want me to go through, definitely throw them out there. A lot of names in this tournament I actually don't recognize from this week, which is interesting. Let's look at Draft Sheet's team. Draft Sheet was already doing some victory laps on Twitter with Mahomes kind of starting to go nuts. 6.9%. I love the Mahomes play, honestly. At 6.9%, nice. No, I think that he was really sharp, honestly. Just wouldn't have probably played him with Tyreek, but I mean, Tyreek Hill at 1%. I mean, I get it. This is Draft Sheet's always going to have a contrarian team, right? I think that Tyreek here, but not pairing him with Hunt isn't probably something. Not pairing with Hunt, not pairing him with Kelsey, super unique. Interesting for sure. Demaryius Thomas revenge game at 1%. Basically got all of this yardage on like one of the first plays of the game, which was kind of funny. Did go with OJ Howard in that game. Chris Carson, as someone told us in the chat, got injured. So that was at least, maybe this was some swaps too. I have no idea. But Carson with the Seahawks defense, yeah, this is never a team I probably would have landed on. But if you're trying to go really off the board in a tournament, he accomplished that. All right, let's look at Empire Maker's team. This is probably the lowest I've ever seen Empire Maker in this tournament. We talk about him, I feel like, almost every week just because he's always cashed or in contention. This week it didn't work out for him. Super chalky team from him. Cam Newton to looks like he went naked Cam, but also gets jammed in Todd Gurley, Kamara, did play Chubb, and Kyle Rudolph. So this is a straight cash lineup with naked Cam. So yeah, I mean he didn't really avoid any of the landmines this week. So Rudolph, Sutton, like all these guys that just kind of didn't quite work out for him. Cam naked. Like if you didn't have McCaffrey, and you played Cam, like it was tough to make up that ground even with Gurley and Kamara. Obviously Gurley kind of hitting his floor last week. I got off Woods late in the week. Yeah. Woods was, I mean, 19%. I was kind of on Cup last week. The great thing about this Rams offense, though, is you can always, like, kind of consider pivoting over to Cooks because Cooks is kind of like the higher upside play in a lot of ways. Like, I feel like he's always the guy I'm kind of looking at for pivots. Woods was kind of like what I thought was going to be one of the more kind of forgotten guys on that roster. I guess wasn't really on him either. Just at that price, it wasn't really something that I was trying to pay up for at 7K. If I was paying 7K, I was going to really try and get to Michael Thomas, obviously. So, yeah. So we talk about Chipotle, Pete, a lot of these guys game stacking. Empire's not doing that. And he's one of those guys that rolls one lineup per slate, probably has more volume in play than almost anyone any week. And he's rolling one team. So feel pretty good about that he's kind of going with at least a similar approach in some of this higher stake stuff. Um, Definitely like to kind of see his thoughts every week. So wish I got off to back-to-back weeks to put up a scoreless 5 for 70 for 7K. Yeah, that's kind of the thing with Michael Thomas too. Kind of avoided him the last couple weeks, and it really paid off just because of how much more they were running. We talked about it Sunday morning as well, but their rushing percentage over the past couple weeks has been pretty crazy. So, all right, unless anyone wants to see, let's look at Osmo's team just because it's pretty contrarian usually. So Kenyon Drake at 4%, Michael Crabtree, he did go with Aldrich, wide receiver in the flex as well. Interesting. All right, I really want to get to some stacks though, guys. I think that's one of the more fun things to do. Latavius Murray ownership. I didn't see Latavius Murray once, to be honest. Oh, there's Adrian Peterson. I guess we didn't talk about him. He 12.5%. All right, let's go over to some of the ownership stuff here. So in the Millionaire Maker, let's just look at the GPP grade. So GPP grade is basically plays that were much higher owned at the high stakes than at the lower stakes. So one of the top plays for that was Alvin Kamara, Cooper Kupp, Cortland Sutton. A lot of these same plays were much higher owned at the higher stakes than at the lower stakes. Julio Jones, one of those plays as well, which is interesting. Julio at 7,900. Guy finally catches a touchdown. But yeah, let's look at some stacks. So one of the things I like to do in this tool over at Labs is actually to kind of look at what some of the kind of chalky cores were. So let's just see who had Todd Gurley with Chubb in the Millionaire Maker, because you probably had to pay down if you really wanted to get in Gurley. So it looks like only 5.2% of teams in the Millionaire Maker had those, and let's add in Kamara. Not sure why that's not loading, but anyways, so these running back cores are kind of interesting. So let's look at, so if you faded Gurley, one with something like McCaffrey, Hunt. I'm not sure why this isn't loading. Weird. All right, well, we can come back to this. Let's go back to the ownership dash then. So Kareem Hunt was 33% in the Millionaire Maker, pretty much across the board around 30%. Kareem Hunt, I wish I would have considered him a little bit more at 7,700. I was kind of locked into McCaffrey in that range. Didn't really totally matter a ton. But yeah, interesting to see him as one of the top guys for sure. Any other questions you guys have? Probably going to wrap things up here pretty quick. Yeah, it was kind of a weird week, to be honest. Wish I would have done some things a little bit differently, but in this tournament, looks like a lot of people kind of made some of these similar mistakes. Like if you played these cheap wide receivers, kind of buried you in a lot of ways. But it is what it is. Best thing about this, we get to move on and kind of do things differently next time. I think my roster construction as far as having Ingram and Kamara felt good at the time as far as being somewhat unique in this tournament, but maybe it wasn't the best idea just because, I mean, I didn't really love Ingram, right, even at his price, so maybe that was a kind of a mistake. All right, so if we don't have any more questions, going to kind of wrap this up, guys. As far as kind of the schedule for the rest of the week, we are going to have a stream per usual at on Thursday during halftime of Thursday Night Football. I'm going to be adding another stream next week to recap the Bankroll Builder Challenge, 10K to 100K with the niche games. So be sure and check out that video over on YouTube if you want to hear more information about what I'm doing as far as that challenge, but they're going to add a stream for that and going to keep kind of flowing in content. So doing this full time now, so I have kind of a whole lot more time to kind of throw myself at doing some more stuff for you guys, more content, and trying to give subscribers as much value as possible, and then just kind of grow this Discord community. So if you haven't checked out the Discord, you're definitely doing yourself a disservice, especially on Sundays when we're kind of throwing around ideas and late swap. But yeah, per usual, check out Hodge and Manny's streams on Sunday morning. Manny streams a ton, obviously, throughout the week as well. So check out both of those guys. And yeah, check out Rotor Tracker as well. If you thought that chart that I showed you guys earlier was pretty cool, got a link for that in my bio. All right, guys. We'll see you guys on Thursday. And good talk. See you out there.